Welcome to another talk on the NEWSTART acronym. Remember that the purpose of the program is to heal a hurting world. Today we will discuss the first T, which stands for temperance. We have made some discoveries investigating factors master designed for our good, such as sunshine, water, air, exercise, and sleep. When discussing temperance, we actually address an element of intensity for each one of these factors. As usual, I wish to start off with a quote from the Bible, and in this case, Proverbs 25 verse 16. Have you found honey? Eat only as much as you need, lest you be filled with it and vomit. So, with this wisdom from King Solomon, let us find a definition for temperance that can serve as basis for the discussion. Most Google images on temperance depict moderation in alcohol consumption, but the NEWSTART acronym goes far beyond that. I found this one to summarize best what we wish to convey in this talk. The definition reads, enjoy things in a proper and balanced way. If those things, goes against the laws of life like alcohol, it is not proper. And if it is either deficient or overindulged, it is not balanced. Both in terms of character and biological makeup, the weakest link will jeopardize the whole being. One weak characteristic or deficiency, toxicity, will render the whole weak. You heard about the government wanting to flatten the coronavirus infection curve. That will be the brown line on this graph. The COVID lockdown was to slow the rate of infection in order to avoid hospitals running out of capacity if the spread was too rapid and the hospitals flooded with patients. The bell-shaped curve is a common feature of nature and psychology. It is the most important probability distribution in statistics because many continuous data in nature and psychology displays the bell-shaped curve when compiled and graphed. For example, if we randomly sampled 100 individuals, we would expect to see a normal distribution frequency curve for many continuous variables, such as IQ, height, weight, and blood pressure for that specific population. The bell curve can also be applied to agriculture and yield or ideal temperature for plant growth, for example. It can also be applied to optimum health, with factors deficient on the one side and factors in oversupply or toxicity on the other side, the right side. In practicing temperance would be to stay in the middle, to go for the optimum, to be balanced. Justus von Liebig formulated the law of minimum in the 1800s, which is still used in agricultural science today. The analogy for the potential of a crop is a barrel with staves of unequal lengths. The capacity of the barrel, or the crop's yield, for example, is limited. Potassium deficiency was one of the first deficiencies I learned to recognize as a soybean specialist. In humans, potassium deficiency can cause weakness, fatigue, muscle cramps or twitching, constipation, or heart rhythms, abnormal heart rhythms. The pale-looking rows in this picture show nitrate toxicity due to a molybdenum deficiency in the soil. Molybdenum is the essential microelement for the production of nitrate reductase enzyme by the plant in order to reduce nitrates produced in the nitrogen fixation process. Getting crop nutrition right might seem like something every farmer should understand, but even the basics can be a challenge. More than 30 minerals are taken out by the plant, but we are only capable of putting back 4 or 5, and maybe if we really specialize, 16 at the most. Usually we only fertilize with 3 macro elements, N, P and K. All these trace elements are permanently removed from soil reserves on a continuous basis when the wood or whole plant is removed from the land. Agricultural practices over many years of ploughing and water erosion has washed soil nutrients out to the ocean. Another good reason why this earth needs a redo. This table depicts the decline in mineral densities in apples from 1914 up to 1992. In the last column you will see the dramatic decline for most minerals except potassium, which is a macro mineral easily available and applied as fertilizer. In the case of iron, the table shows a decline of 96%. So even fruits are not the same as what they were in the early 1900s. I wish we could know what the content and taste was back in the Garden of Eden 6,000 years ago. This chart gives the mineral content for modern man. Again, one wonders what Adam's chart would have looked like. Interesting to note that the first 4 is actually coming from the air. Nutrients from the air, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. This is the type of research and results that everybody should take note of. The question asked is whether temperance in nutrition will lead to temperance in behavior. A survey was done amongst adolescents to test for nutrient deficiency and the results interpreted in the inserted table. The authors wrote, "We evaluated what happened to the behavior of violent young adult prisoners from 18 to 21 years old when nutrients missing from their diets were reinstated on a random basis where neither the volunteers, the prison staff, nor the researchers in the prison knew what was given to each individual. 231 volunteers were given either a placebo or active content capsules containing broadly the daily requirements for vitamins, minerals, and essential fatty acids. The number of proven offences committed by each prisoner was monitored before and while taking the supplements. The results was that those consuming active supplements for at least 2 weeks recorded a 37% decrease in the most serious offences such as violence. These findings have been replicated by the Dutch Ministry of Justice. Their double-blind study reported a 48% difference between groups. In these studies, if these studies were widely replicated, and they need to be, we may have a simple and humane means to help reduce and prevent a significant proportion of violence, antisocial behavior, and suffering in society. Our study showed that simply ensuring prisoners consume the United Kingdom government reference nutrient intake, their behavior was significantly improved. An intriguing aspect of this is that the diets of the prisoners were typically better than those consumed by their disaffected counterparts in the community. But a significant effect was still observed. Conceivably, if this were rolled out to disadvantaged people consuming poor diets in the community at large, it might help to improve behavior in society. There are already studies that suggest that providing a better diet to young children would prevent a significant proportion of antisocial behavior. In this graph is depicted the average sugar consumption per age bracket for Americans in orange. The recommended intake is in blue. Too much refined sugar can increase inflammation throughout your body, including your gut. And research has found that gut inflammation contributes to mood disorders, including anxiety and depression. A sugar high will call for insulin, and the resultant removal from the blood may in turn lead to a sugar low and hypoglycemia. It is then that in this condition that sufferers can turn to violence. Pure refined sugar also blocks out vitamin D functionality, and we have discussed the critical importance of vitamin D in several studies before. I was amazed at the speed and the endurance of cane cutters, knowing that their staple diet was stalk cane. Thinking about it made me realize that it is okay for them to chew cane because their work is quite energy demanding, so they do need more calories per day than the average man on the street. However, another factor that should not be overlooked is the fact that chewing cane also give them the vitamins, the phytochemicals, and the minerals that comes with the sugar, the sucrose. Well, the impact of this habit on their health was investigated. It was found that the teeth of cane workers chewing cane were in a better condition than the average. It was also found that cane juice contains a factor, possibly molybdenum, that protects against tooth decay. Among the Zulu and Pandu cane cutters in the KZN, who chew a great deal of sugar cane, diabetes is virtually unknown. But in contrast, very high correlations have been found between deaths from diabetes and consumption of refined sugar. So it appears once again that man has messed up with nature, what nature had to offer. This is yet another testimony for advocating whole food rather than processed or refined food. There exists an old traditional proverb coming from the Indian continent which reads, "When diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When diet is correct, medicine is of no need." I think this is a very, very wise proverb that we can take note of. Let food be thy medicine. Here are some examples of food that we know is good for specific ailments, such as high blood pressure or prostate health. Here is 2 maps for natural painkillers and cancer-fighting foods. Note the different colors which represent flavonoids in the cancer-fighting foods. The wonder or the master design in our foods is that they give us much more than just minerals, which the plants take up from the soil. We cannot live without plants because they give us the proteins, the carbohydrates, the fats, the vitamins, the minerals, the phytochemicals that we cannot produce or formulate ourselves in our bodies. The art is to apply temperance in gathering and in digesting all that is required in a way to optimize our health. In the Garden of Eden it was easy, but as the planet got more worked over and changed by man, it became more difficult to know what is needed and where to find it. Here is a publication that indexes more than 3,100 foods in terms of their antioxidant content. More than ever do we need to know our status for various minerals, vitamins, and metabolites in order to correct a gradual buildup of an imbalance. And of course, it is not only about food choices, but also temperance in lifestyle choices such as stress, sleep, activity, fresh air, and the need to stay hydrated, things that we have covered in previous talks. Let me illustrate the consequence of an imbalance by using our vulnerability to the virus infection as an example. The current COVID-19 pandemic is escalating as we come out of a lockdown in South Africa, with the current cold weather very much in favor of the virus. Graham Sate, a soil scientist and author of the book Nutritional Rules, has a favorite saying: happy soils, happy plants, happy people. Enrolling in some of his short courses, it struck me how closely human nutrition requirements line up with plant nutrition, and how important healthy plants are for human well-being. It also struck me that we actually know more about optimum plant nutrition than optimum human nutrition. The reason can perhaps be found in the reductive research methodology on plants that cannot possibly be done on humans. We can, for example, move one nutrient from acutely deficient all the way to seriously toxic in plants and record the plant response. In that way, we have learned more about most growth factors and their physiological implications in plants, and even photographed that, than what we know in humans, where we make use of population averages and contrast between healthy and sick as guidelines. In plants, we can model their growth and development on the computer using mathematical equations. It turns out that many of the mechanisms that plants use to protect them against diseases, the so-called phytochemicals, can also help man against human diseases. One important thing to remember, however, on this topic is that plant diseases do not carry over to humans, unlike animal diseases. So in his book, Graham Sate discusses nutrition for both plant and man. And on this list of protectants against the virus are the following that I would like to discuss: zinc and magnesium and selenium, iron, and then the fat-soluble enhancers. Let's discuss zinc first. It is estimated that up to 79% of the human population are deficient in zinc and in magnesium. Zinc is required by the thymus gland for the production of key immune cells. It is also the most important mineral for prostate health. In fact, a healthy prostate contains 7 times more zinc than an enlarged or cancerous gland. Just a 10% deficiency of zinc has been shown to compromise immunity. Zinc is deficient in most cereal growing soils in the Western world, and uptake is impacted in many vegetable operations due to high phosphorus, a notorious zinc inhibitor, and one of the macro elements, as I've said earlier. Just search the internet for zinc inhibits coronaviruses, and you will find the relevant studies. There is also a great video that explains the mechanics of zinc's protective capacity. It comes from the medcram.com site, which I've mentioned earlier, where complex medical science is made much more accessible to the layman. Magnesium is termed the master mineral, as it is linked to more enzymes than any other mineral. Every breath you take, every move you make is conducted by enzymes, and your immune system is also driven by these protein-based catalysts. A key driver of magnesium deficiency in 8 out of 10 individuals is stress sucking up the magnesium. Ironically, magnesium in adequate supply makes us feel relaxed, the opposite of stress. Selenium is another antioxidant and anti-inflammatory liver supporter that we need to discuss. In Australia and New Zealand are second only to the African continent in terms of inherently low selenium levels in our soils. If we truly are what we eat, then low selenium foods from selenium deficient soils will inevitably create deficiencies in consumers. Selenium is important for liver and lung function and has been shown to have antiviral and antibacterial properties. 4 Brazil nuts per day is recommended during this pandemic period because Brazil nuts is high in selenium. Iodine is the most important mineral for the health of our thyroid gland. It is required to ensure adequate production of thyroid hormones, and these hormones can directly impact multiple branches of the immune system. Iodine is part of a group of interrelated minerals on the atomic table called the halogens, and the other members of this group, which include chloride, fluoride, and bromide. Bromide is present in bread, all impact negatively on iodine uptake. Once again, know your status and avoid deficiency or toxicity. Then the fat-soluble immune enhancers, which is the vitamins A, D, C, and K. There is a link between vitamin D and A coming from carrot juice. Vitamin C offers critical important support for the cells that kill invaders and the cells that coordinate those attacks. It is equally important for the production of antibodies that fight known infections. In the prestigious The Lancet Respiratory Medicine Journal, where high-dose vitamin C is suggested as a rescue therapy for those with acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is caused by COVID-19, is an important fact to take note of. Of course, vitamin D has a very wide range of protection against acute respiratory infections, and we have discussed vitamin D thoroughly in our talk on sunshine and its implications for health. Well, there you have it. The least you can do is to go check your status. Go for a blood analysis or urine analysis or whatever to get your status and ensure that you optimize your levels at all times during this pandemic period. I want to quote Graham Sate on the topic of nutrition. He says, "I've noted that nutrition is barely studied in a medical degree. How can one be expected to understand the protective chemistry of certain minerals, antioxidants, vitamins, if their role was completely overlooked during medical education? Our medics graduate with wonderful surgical skills. They have mastered the armory of symptom-treating drugs on hand, but this is reactive medicine. Now, more than ever, we require a proactive approach. Each and every one of us should be boosting our immunity in preparation for the COVID-19 pandemic virus." Temperance, of course, is also about being diligent in your labor, not to slack or not to be extreme. Proverbs 10 verse 5 says, "He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. In fact, verse 4 says, lazy hands make a man poor, but diligent hands will bring wealth. Solomon had it correct, and it is so important for us to practice temperance in all that we are and do and live from. As usual, I want to end off with some Bible-based wisdom, and this time it comes from Prophets and Kings, page 482. Daniel and his associates had been trained by their parents to habits of strict temperance. They had been taught that God would hold them accountable for their capabilities, and that they must never dwarf or enfeeble their powers. This education was to Daniel and his companions the means of their preservation amongst the demoralizing influences of the court of Babylon. Strong were the temptations surrounding them in that corrupt and luxurious court, but they remained uncontaminated. No power, no influence could sway them from the principles they had learned in early life by a study of the Word and works of God. This is also very, very relevant in our day. And with that, we leave you until the last, which will give us another vital link or factor without which we cannot maintain happiness and wellness. That factor is trust, and I trust to see you then. Keep well.